The real battle has never been out there, not in the markets, not in the meetings, not even in the competition we face every day. The real battle is the one that happens quietly within us. Every morning, before the world wakes up, that battle begins between what we feel like doing and what we know we should do, between the comfort of staying still and the call to grow, between emotion and purpose. Most people think discipline is about control, about suppressing emotion, about forcing ourselves through routines. But discipline isn't suppression, it's alignment. It's the process of making your thoughts, feelings, and actions work together towards something meaningful. The reason we struggle with discipline is not because we lack strength, but because we haven't decided what truly matters to us. When you don't know your why, your emotions will always win. Every decision you make carries a quiet voice inside that asks, what do you really want? The problem is that most of us never pause long enough to listen. We react, we move, we scroll, we rush. But when you take a moment to understand your inner conflict, the part that wants to grow and the part that wants to stay comfortable, you start to see that discipline is not the enemy of emotion, but its guide. Inside every person there's a tug of war, one side craving progress, the other craving peace. The one that wins is the one you feed the most. If you feed distraction, you grow weaker. If you feed discipline, you grow stronger. The battle within is not about defeating your emotions, but about directing them. Passion, frustration, even fear, all of these can serve you if you know how to steer them. When you feel resistance, it's not a sign of failure. It's proof that your emotions are active, that your inner world is alive. The purpose of discipline is to bring order to that energy. Think of a river without banks. It floods and destroys. With direction, it generates power. Your emotions are the same. Without boundaries, they can overwhelm you. With discipline, they can move mountains. The moment you understand that discipline begins in the mind, everything changes. You stop blaming circumstances, people, or timing. You realize that your external results are simply reflections of your internal consistency. When you win the battle within, the world outside starts to respond differently. Most of us are trained to fight the wrong wars. We chase external victories, wealth, recognition, success, while losing the quiet, unseen battle with ourselves. We keep seeking more without mastering the one person who controls everything, the self. The truth is, you can't lead anyone, create anything meaningful, or sustain any success until you first learn to lead yourself. And that leadership begins not with force, but with understanding. It's the decision to face your impulses, your fears, your doubts, not with resistance, but with awareness. The real battle is not about becoming tougher, it's about becoming more intentional. Emotion is one of the most powerful forces in human life. It drives every decision, every connection, every act of courage, and every moment of hesitation. Emotion is pure energy. It can lift you to unimaginable heights or pull you into quiet defeat. The difference lies not in the emotion itself, but in how you direct it. That's where discipline comes in. Discipline is not the absence of emotion. It's the art of channeling it towards something that matters. Imagine your emotions as wind, unpredictable, powerful, sometimes overwhelming. Left unchecked, they can scatter your focus and pull you off course. But when you build the sails of discipline, that same wind becomes the force that carries you forward. The stronger your discipline, the better you harness the energy of your emotions. You stop being blown around by how you feel and you start steering toward where you want to go. Most people think discipline kills emotion, but the truth is it gives emotion purpose. Anger can become determination. Fear can become preparation. Sadness can become reflection. The disciplined mind doesn't silence emotion, it listens, translates, and then decides what to do with it. The power of discipline is that it transforms raw feeling into meaningful motion. When you lack discipline, emotions take the lead. You say things you regret, you make choices that don't serve you, and you drift away from what you truly value. But when you cultivate discipline, you create space, a moment between feeling and action, where choice lies. In that space, you can decide whether to react or to respond, whether to give in or to grow. Discipline turns emotion from something that controls you into something that fuels you. Think of the athlete who uses exhaustion as motivation to push harder, the leader who channels frustration into focus, or the artist who turns heartbreak into creation. These aren't emotionless people. They're emotionally disciplined people. They've learned to use the energy within instead of fighting against it. The relationship between emotion and discipline is not one of conflict, but a balance. You need both. Too much emotion without discipline leads to chaos. Too much discipline without emotion leads to emptiness. The key is harmony, using discipline as the structure that allows emotion to express itself productively. Emotion gives life its color, discipline gives it shape. One without the other leaves us incomplete. When you master both, your actions stop being random reactions and start becoming deliberate expressions of who you are. You move not because of impulse, but because of intention. And the truth is, once you learn to direct your emotions with discipline, you become unstoppable. Not because life gets easier, but because you've learned how to move forward, even when it doesn't feel good to do so. Motivation is one of the most misunderstood forces in personal growth. We treat it like a spark that will somehow keep burning on its own. as if a few words, a song, or a burst of inspiration will carry us through the long, difficult climb. But motivation is fleeting by nature. It's emotional fuel, not structural integrity. It gets you started, yes, but it was never designed to keep you going. What sustains progress isn't motivation, it's discipline. When you rely on motivation, you're depending on how you feel. But feelings are unpredictable. One day you wake up inspired and ready to move mountains. The next you can barely get out of bed. If your commitment to your goals depends on how you feel, you'll always live at the mercy of your mood. Discipline breaks that dependency. It teaches you to act based on your values, not your emotions. There's a dangerous myth that says you have to feel ready before you begin. The truth is, readiness is a lie the mind tells to delay discomfort. You don't wait for motivation to show up, you move and motivation follows. The disciplined person doesn't ask, do I feel like it? They ask, is it necessary? That simple shift from emotion to purpose transforms your entire relationship with effort. Every successful person has faced the same battle. The moments when motivation disappears, when excitement fades, when progress feels invisible. The difference between those who continue and those who quit isn't talent or luck. It's the quiet decision to keep going anyway. Discipline is what you fall back on when enthusiasm runs dry. It's the bridge between intention and achievement. Motivation makes you act when things feel good. Discipline makes you act when they don't. One is a burst, the other is a habit. Motivation can ignite passion, but without the structure of discipline, that passion burns out quickly. When you train yourself to act regardless of emotion, you no longer need to chase motivation. You become your own source of momentum. The reason discipline outlasts motivation is because it's rooted in identity, not excitement. Motivation asks, what do I want right now? Discipline asks, who am I becoming? The former is about pleasure, the latter is about purpose. When your actions align with who you aspire to be, consistency becomes natural. Even when comfort whispers otherwise. Think about the small, unglamorous actions, the early mornings, the difficult conversations, the moments of restraint when no one's watching. Those are the seeds of mastery. Discipline thrives in those quiet spaces where motivation has long since vanished. Every time you choose consistency over comfort, you reinforce the belief that you are capable of more than your emotions suggest. And the beauty of it all is that when discipline becomes your foundation, motivation stops being something you wait for. It becomes something you generate. The very act of showing up, even when you don't feel like it, reignites the fire. You stop chasing energy and start creating it. There's a small, almost invisible space that exists between what you feel and what you do. It's the pause between emotion and action. And in that pause lies the essence of self-discipline. Most people move too quickly to notice it. They feel something, anger, fear, excitement, and they act, they react. But those who master themselves learn to live inside that pause. They understand that in that single breath, they hold the power to change the outcome of almost any situation. Emotions arrive fast. They're ancient survival signals designed to make us act instantly, to protect, defend, escape. But in the modern world, not every emotional impulse deserves an immediate reaction. Discipline is what allows you to catch that impulse before it controls you. It's not about suppressing emotion, but about creating just enough space to ask, what's the right move here? When you pause, even for a moment, you disrupt the cycle of reactivity. You give yourself the chance to choose response over reflex. That pause can mean the difference between saying something you regret and saying something that builds trust. Between quitting in frustration and pushing through to victory. Between feeding your fears and proving them wrong. That tiny gap between feeling and action is where emotional mastery begins. It's not easy to find that space at first. Our emotions are quick and loud, and the world rewards speed. But the more you practice pausing, the stronger your awareness becomes. You start noticing your triggers, the people, the moments, the thoughts that spark emotion. And each time you pause before reacting, you reclaim a little more control. It's like strengthening a muscle you didn't know you had. The pause is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the recognition that reaction is easy, but intention takes strength. When you slow down your response, you don't lose power, you gain it. You stop being pulled by emotion and start leading it. That's where clarity lives, that's where composure grows, that's where discipline breathes. Imagine standing in a heated conversation. Emotion rises, the heart pounds, the voice tightens, the instinct is to strike back. But discipline whispers, wait. In that moment of stillness, the emotional storm starts to settle. The pause doesn't erase what you feel, it gives you perspective. You begin to see the situation, not just your reaction to it. And that changes everything. Mastery isn't about never feeling anger, fear, or doubt. It's about becoming skilled at navigating those emotions. The pause is the steering wheel that keeps you from veering off course. It turns raw emotion into intentional motion. Every great leader, athlete, and creator you admire, they've learned to extend that pause just long enough to choose their next move wisely. The truth is, that moment between feeling and action is where your freedom lies. It's the birthplace of discipline, the intersection of emotion and choice, the space where you stop being controlled by your feelings and start using them to shape your future. Self-discipline is often misunderstood as a form of restriction, a kind of self-imposed prison where joy and spontaneity go to die. But in truth, self-discipline is one of the highest forms of self-respect. It's not about denying yourself pleasure. It's about proving to yourself that you are worthy of something greater than momentary satisfaction. Every disciplined action says, I believe I'm capable of more than my impulses. When you commit to discipline, you're not punishing yourself, you're protecting your potential. You're setting boundaries that honor your future, not just your feelings. Think of it this way: when you respect someone, you keep your word to them. You show up when you say you will. You treat their time and energy as valuable. Discipline is doing exactly that, but for yourself. It's the daily practice of keeping promises you've made to the person in the mirror. Most people break those promises because they treat their emotions as truth. I don't feel like it becomes a justification, not a signal to overcome. But self-respect grows when you act in alignment with your principles instead of your moods. You start realizing that comfort is temporary, but integrity is permanent. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you strengthen the belief that you can trust yourself, and that belief changes everything. When you lack self-discipline, it's not just your habits that suffer, it's your identity. You start doubting your own word. You say you'll change, but you don't. You make plans, but you quit halfway. Slowly, you begin to lose faith in yourself. That's why discipline matters so deeply, because it rebuilds that faith. It's the daily act of showing yourself that you mean what you say. Self-discipline transforms self-doubt into self-respect through evidence. Not through affirmations or wishful thinking, but through consistent action. You don't build confidence by talking about your goals, you build it by honoring them. The disciplined person doesn't need to convince themselves they're capable, they've proven it through repetition. Every completed task, every resisted temptation, every difficult choice is a deposit in the bank of self-worth. And the truth is, self-respect feels better than indulgence ever will. The momentary comfort of giving in fades quickly, but the quiet pride of discipline lasts. It's the satisfaction of knowing you did what was right for you, even when no one else was watching. That's real strength. That's real freedom. Discipline also reshapes how you see yourself. Instead of chasing validation from others, you begin to find fulfillment within. You stop needing approval because your own respect becomes enough. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Your consistency speaks for itself. The disciplined person isn't louder, they're steadier. Their confidence doesn't come from recognition, it comes from reliability. And that's the power of self-discipline. As self-respect, it creates a foundation of trust within yourself so strong that external validation becomes optional. You start to understand that the most powerful commitment you'll ever make is the one you make to your own growth. And every act of discipline is how you keep that promise alive. The mind is a muscle, and like any muscle, it grows through resistance, repetition, and recovery. Self-discipline isn't built overnight, it's trained, refined, and strengthened one small choice at a time. You can't expect mental toughness to appear when you need it if you haven't been exercising it daily. The people who seem calm under pressure, focused under chaos, and consistent through challenges aren't born that way. They've trained their minds to stay steady when emotion wants to take over. Training the mind begins with awareness. You start noticing your patterns, the moments when you hesitate, the excuses that feel convincing, the emotions that try to steer your decisions. Every time you catch yourself before falling into those old habits, you're lifting mental weight. It's that pause, that moment of choice, that strengthens discipline the most. Awareness is the warm-up, action is the workout. The truth is, consistency is heavier than motivation. It requires showing up even when there's no reward, no applause, no visible progress. But every repetition counts. Every time you honor your routine, every time you follow through on a commitment, you're carving new neural pathways, teaching your mind that effort isn't negotiable. Just like physical training, the results don't show immediately, but the transformation is happening beneath the surface. The key is to start small. Discipline doesn't begin with monumental actions, it starts with micro decisions. Waking up on time, finishing the task you promised, choosing patience over reaction. Each of these choices, insignificant on their own, compound into something extraordinary. Over time, you stop needing willpower to do what's necessary. It becomes your nature. Training the mind also means accepting failure as part of the process. Muscles don't grow without tension, and discipline doesn't grow without friction. You will slip, you will procrastinate, you will have days where emotions win. But instead of self-criticism, use those moments as feedback. Ask, what triggered me? What can I learn? Every setback is another rep in your training. The more you recover and return, the stronger your mental endurance becomes. There's also a quiet humility in training discipline. You realize it's not about perfection, it's about progress. The disciplined mind doesn't chase flawless performance, it values persistence. It's not how perfectly you act in one moment, but how consistently you return to your path after each detour. The goal isn't to feel in control every second, it's to keep moving forward even when you don't. Over time, discipline turns into rhythm. What once felt forced becomes fluid. What once felt heavy becomes natural. You begin to operate with quiet strength, not because life has become easier, but because you've become sturdier. Your emotional waves still come, but they no longer drown you. You've trained your mind to stand firm. And that's the beauty of discipline as a trained muscle. It's built slowly, quietly, through repetition. It doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself in your patience, your persistence, and your peace. Discomfort is the birthplace of growth. It's the raw material from which strength, wisdom, and resilience are built. Yet most people spend their lives avoiding it, running from the very thing that has the power to transform them. Self-discipline requires that you make peace with discomfort, not as an enemy to resist, but as a teacher to learn from. Every time you choose discomfort over ease, you're sending a message to yourself. I'm willing to do what others won't so I can become who others can't. The growth never feels comfortable while it's happening. The process of change is messy, uncertain, and often painful. That's why so many people stop halfway, not because they're weak, but because they misinterpret discomfort as a sign they're doing something wrong. In truth, it's the opposite. Discomfort is the signal that you're stretching beyond your current limits, expanding into new capacity. It means you're in the right place. The disciplined mind understands that discomfort isn't punishment, it's feedback. It tells you where your edges are, the boundaries of what you've known, what you've tolerated, and what you've believed about yourself. When you feel resistance, that's your cue to lean in, not pull away. The work that challenges you most is often the exact work that will change you most. But there's a subtle art to it. Discipline doesn't glorify suffering for its own sake. It's not about pain, it's about purpose. The goal isn't to chase discomfort blindly, but to endure it intentionally. You don't need to seek chaos, you need to stay steady within it. Discomfort, when guided by meaning, becomes growth. Without meaning, it's just struggle. That's why, your deeper reason matters so much. It's what turns pain into progress. Think about the moments in your life when you truly grew, emotionally, mentally, professionally. They probably came after something uncomfortable, a failure, a rejection, a risk, or a difficult truth. Each of those moments demanded discipline, the willingness to stay with the discomfort long enough to learn from it. That's where resilience is born, not in comfort, but in endurance. When you train yourself to face discomfort, you start to see it differently. You stop labeling it as something to avoid and begin recognizing it as the threshold of transformation. You begin to understand that ease rarely creates excellence. The people who stand out in any field aren't necessarily the most talented. They're the ones who can sit with discomfort the longest without running away. Discomfort strips away illusion. It reveals what's real, your fears, your doubts, your limitations. And in that exposure, you find clarity. You realize that the obstacle was never the challenge itself, but your resistance to it. When you learn to sit in discomfort with awareness instead of avoidance, you turn pain into perspective. You start to grow from the inside out. And over time, something incredible happens. The discomfort that once made you hesitate begins to feel like home. Not because it's easy, but because it's honest. You start to crave the stretch, the challenge, the friction. Because you know what comes after evolution. Freedom is a word we love to use, yet so few truly understand it. Most people mistake freedom for the absence of rules. The ability to do whatever they want, whenever they want. But real freedom isn't about doing what feels good in the moment. It's about having the strength to do what's right in the long run. It's not about living without limits. It's about creating the kind of limits that set you free. Self-discipline is that paradox, the structure that unlocks your potential, the boundaries that make expansion possible. When you live without discipline, you're not free. You're bound by impulse. You become a prisoner to your emotions, your distractions, your habits. You may feel in control because you're doing what you want, but in truth, you're being controlled by what you can't resist. Freedom without discipline quickly turns into chaos. But discipline, when chosen consciously, becomes liberation, the kind that gives you power over yourself. Discipline gives you choices. It creates space between reaction and decision, between desire and direction. It allows you to say no to what's easy so you can say yes to what's meaningful. Each disciplined act expands your capacity for freedom because it builds trust in your ability to follow through, to stay steady, to govern yourself. And when you can trust yourself, you no longer need the world to control you. This is the quiet irony of discipline, which feels restrictive at first, eventually leads to lightness. It removes the clutter of indecision, the weight of regret, the anxiety of inconsistency. You start moving through life with clarity instead of confusion. You stop chasing temporary highs because you found something deeper. The calm that comes from alignment. Discipline doesn't shrink your life, it gives it shape, and that shape creates meaning. Freedom through discipline also means you no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. You're not living reactively, trying to keep up with expectations or comparisons. Your actions come from intention, not impulse. You know who you are, where you're going, and what you're willing to do to get there. That kind of freedom can't be given by anyone else. It's earned through consistent practice, one disciplined choice at a time. The beauty of discipline is that it liberates you from the noise. When you know your path, distractions lose their pull. You stop needing to be everywhere, to do everything, to please everyone. You operate with focus, and focus is freedom. The energy that once scattered into 100 directions now fuels the one direction that matters most. Freedom isn't a reward for self-discipline, it's the natural result of it. It's what happens when you align your actions with your values so deeply that temptation loses its power. You're no longer chasing control, you've become it. The disciplined person doesn't need external order because they've built internal order, a steady rhythm that guides them through chaos. And when that happens, life feels lighter, not tighter. The same discipline that once felt like a burden becomes a gift. It's the quiet confidence of knowing you can handle what comes, that you can lead your emotions instead of being led by them. That's the ultimate freedom. Not the right to do anything, but the ability to choose everything with purpose.